Hello, and welcome to episode 9 of the Sudden But Inevitable Rewatch. I am your host, as always, and your captain, Jesse. With me, just like every other week, this week is Ricky D from Best Flicks with Ricky D. Ricky D from Best Flicks with Ricky D. How are you doing this week, my friend?
It's been a good week. There's been a lot of talk about the weather. Whole lot of talk about the weather during the end of the week. So just kind of hanging out, bearing storm, waiting for that, and I'm ready to do this.
Excellent. That's what I like to hear. We had several inches of partly cloudy over my way this week. Nothing quite much has happened yet, but I'm assuming it will at some point. Actually, if anybody gets hit first, it's going to be our other two guests, Josh, the head of the Twist My Arm Network, and his co-life host, Kylie, who is back. Look at that.
Don't even.
Oh, look at us. Oh, we're here. We're totally
Josh and
here.
Kylie. Wow.
We got the crew with us. We got
Yeah.
we're here.
I appreciate
I love
you
those guys.
bringing everyone with. Right, that's really appreciated. Sounds like you could use a Chief O'Brien on your bridge. Kylie, I'm really happy to have you back with us. Josh, maybe you should change your name tag to include Kylie.
Oh yes.
How was your week?
That's
this
the one
week,
thing
you
I didn't
guys?
do. Jesus.
It was good. Same as what Ricky said, just kind of preparing for the snow we're supposed to have this weekend. And then, of course, last weekend had a very eventful weekend with family and a baby gender reveal. So that was fun. It's a boy,
Oh.
by the way. So that's where I
Congratulations to the
was.
family.
Yes, thank you. It was a good weekend, but I'm glad to be back.
Excellent. We are glad to have you back, even if you brought Josh with you. Now, normally we would be
Aw.
through with our interviews, but you may have noticed we've been on a bit of a roll with securing really cool guests, and this week is no exception. This week, we are very proud to introduce Sean from Cheap Seat Reviews. Welcome to the show, Sean. How are you doing this week?
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can't believe that I'm here. Apparently all my bribes have finally come through. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I was going to say, I really appreciate that. And the show's bank account really appreciates that. It means a lot
Yeah,
to us.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So-
I really appreciate that. So thank you.
The only bribes that we've received so far have actually just been wonderful, wonderful, beautiful, gracious gifts that have been given to us by Shepard Saxon. And in case you haven't already, you can go check out the unboxing of all of those gifts over on the Twist My Arm YouTube channel. It's called The Sudden But Inevitable Unboxing. Very creative, I know. You can also follow us on Instagram at Sudden But Inevitable Podcast to see very pretty pictures of our brand new shinies. Before we jump any further into this, I just want to give Sean a moment to talk about Cheap Seat Reviews. When you're new on Twitter as a podcast, you start looking for other podcasts to help you get your signal boosted and stuff like that. And there are a lot of podcasts out there, and it's hard to find people that are genuine and that really care about what they're doing. Sean, I know that podcasting is not something new for you, so I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, that's the nicest way he could say that I'm old. I will have to admit a little bit. It was funny. I sent him a message. You guys, about 4 or 5 episodes ago, it might have been like episode 2 or 3. You were commenting that the episode aired in like 2002, and you guys are kind of saying, "Oh yeah, I was like 6 or 7 when that episode aired," and I'm like, "Oh yeah,
16 or 17.
We were 13. We were 13.
okay, 13. Okay, all right." I was like, "Oh, I was a junior in college." Yeah, so. But no, so Cheap Seat Reviews. We've been doing Cheap Seat Reviews for. We celebrated our 7th anniversary a couple months ago. We just released episode 337. It's a weekly podcast. We review movies, mostly on streaming. Sometimes we'll do like a spoiler cast if we're doing something that's in the theater. Usually the Marvel or the DC, something big like that. But for the most part, we keep it on streaming. And it's a lot of fun, and it's been one of those hobbies. Really, it's just a fun thing to do. Never made a dime off of it. Don't care. It's just fun. So if you can, yeah.
What is the last Netflix original program that you watched?
last Netflix original. Was The Trial of the Chicago 7 a Netflix original?
I think it might have been. You
I
haven't
think-
watched the like Murdering the Mormons documentary yet?
Murder Among
No, we don't.
Mormons.
What is
We
it?
don't usually review docs.
Okay.
Yeah, typically well, not typically. We've only ever done features. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm looking back at our list. Yeah, the last Christmas Chronicles 2.
Trial of Chicago 7 is a Netflix original.
So yeah, we did that one.
There you
We
go.
did the Christmas Chronicles. The Netflix movies are actually pretty fun to review.
Some of them are so bad, man.
That's what makes
Like,
them good.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. Like, I think we did. Were you with us and we did Bright? Oh
yeah.
my God! It was.
We reviewed
just-
Bright.
Will
Oh.
Smith acts really, really hard. He acts harder than anybody else I've ever seen.
I actually
Is that what you call that?
I actually like that movie. Believe it or not, I had a good time with it. It's not a good
I
movie.
thought it
I
was
just had fun
fine.
with it.
Yeah, it's okay.
Right.
And that's
I
the
believe
thing.
it.
It's a terrible movie, but you're right. It was like a fun ride, but
Yeah.
sometimes
It was
you're like,
enjoyable.
ah.
Yeah.
Honestly,
And
though,
sometimes that's all you're looking for, it's
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
a fun ride and something to kill some time, that kind of a thing.
Yep.
This week we are not just here for a fun ride. A fun ride is definitely part of what we are here for. But first, as always, we need to fix some Goram mistakes. Now, we had a good run there, you guys. We had a couple shows where we didn't make very many mistakes, so we didn't have a lot of corrections to issue. This time, they're not really huge. They're more for fun, which means they're kind of mostly for me. Anyways, let's just jump
Oh,
right
great.
into
Here
it.
we
So, okay, so last week we were talking about how Kylie D, the show's Kylie, had spent all week on Twitter teaching me to understand the Scottish accent, and that's still true. And I'm better at understanding how it sounds. Not super great at reading a Scottish accent. And what I mean by that is, you may remember last week we said, "Hello, Rhonda D. Thank you for joining your daughter, Callie." Because it's a Scottish name, it's actually pronounced Rona or Rona. Anyways, I'm very sorry. All of my ignorance just spills out of me every week. It happens constantly. There's a D in it. It goes unpronounced. Anyways, speaking of ignorance, Ricky D, do you know which correction I'm about to issue here?
Is it the one that I already made in this episode?
I
No, okay.
don't know.
That show,
Okay.
the show I was trying to mention is called Murder Among the Mormons. It's not the Mormon murder mystery or anything like that. Murder Among the Mormons is what I was trying to say.
I'm
But no,
I think
other than
either
that, I'm
one-
not quite sure.
Okay. Either I think that would be a good title. So last week during the synopsis, you named the plucky mechanic recruited on the spot as Kylie Fry. So normally I would let this go, considering our show's proximity to a Kaylee, a Kylie, and a Callie. But you pointed out my stealth edit 2 episodes ago, and now there shall be no mercy.
So you're
Yeah.
like that guy in the
Um,
comments on the Facebook page who's pointing out typos right now.
But to be fair, I also corrected myself when I mentioned the wrong character in reference to the laundry tunnel. So I'm showing consistency, if nothing else. Finally, to Josh's point from last week, Zoe could have said, "What a piece of junk," because at this point, Fox still owned Star Wars. So, just throwing that out there. You were saying maybe she didn't say that because she couldn't say that, but it's like she probably could have, because they own Star Wars, so it wouldn't have been a problem. Same reason The Simpsons could do all those Star Wars references.
Fox owned the distribution rights of Star Wars. I don't think.
Yeah, let's not.
I think George
pretend
Lucas.
that-
They had to go
Let's not
through
pretend
Lucasfilm
Fox
to
wasn't
get
just
any
in
of that
charge.
stuff.
All the Family Guy episodes and all of the other.
Nah,
Yeah, don't even.
The whole reason they weren't in charge was because George Lucas pulled out so he could have a toy deal. That's why everything under the sun had a Star Wars reference, because George Lucas was like, "Yeah, go for it. You're good. Do it up."
So then, why wouldn't Firefly have one?
I wasn't disagreeing.
Oh,
I
it sounded
totally
like
think-
you were disagreeing.
I
We- so
totally think that
Josh and I
that the pants and her saying that are all Star Wars references. And that
So
it's
Josh
totally
and
fine.
I have known each other for so long that it's kind of like we're married. So sometimes when we're agreeing really emphatically, it sounds like we're very angry and disagree.
Okay, I'm just
Um,
trying to
but
say you're right.
Yeah, it sounds like that's not what's happened. So unless you guys have any other corrections to issue, I think that's the last correction that I have written down. Did you guys have any?
The only
Mm-mm.
corrections I would like to put forth are for this episode.
Here we
So,
go.
Oh,
Yeah. And,
Already?
and
Hold on to your butts.
no, and this is great. This is great. So again, old guy, I watch things with subtitles on,
Mhm.
and
we do too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
subtitle person did a poor job on this episode that we're getting ready to talk about, and so I'm looking forward to
Oh,
to
okay.
kind of ripping them a little bit when we get to it, because
Someone's
apparently
getting
they didn't know,
dragged.
they didn't know what the word "go-ram" was. That apparently doesn't mean anything to them. So every time they would say "go-ram" or "go-ram it," it was a different word. So we'll get to that
I
when we
did
get to it.
notice that actually, but
Yeah.
Grandma.
Before
funny.
we do go any further, Kylie did request that she could talk a little bit about last week's episode. Just
think
give
this
a
is great.
little bit of feedback.
so yeah, just a little
Yes.
tiny bit of thoughts.
Because yeah, so
Does she know what the
Kylie-
stakes are?
No. It's okay. Let's
Don't
just
worry,
let
I've
Kylie talk.
already cleared it. Everything is gonna be just fine.
Just let Kylie talk.
Okay. So anywho, it was oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. It was so exciting. It was one of those episodes where everything was happening and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. Goodness gracious." So for that reason, I definitely decided that I wanted to rate it a 10 because at every turn it was very exciting, suspense everywhere, my heart was pounding. Ricky D is like shaking his head.
Oh
I don't
no, I'm
know.
laughing at the sound effects.
The
They're
sound
new. They're
Oh.
new. I'm laughing. It's funny.
I can't hear them, so cool.
I turned them down.
Okay. But yeah, so I'm sitting there, on the couch, and my mom and stepdad are making dinner or whatever, and I was like, I have to watch this episode at least. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like looking, and like I said, I was like, oh goodness, yay! Like this stuff is happening, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, is that Kaylee? It was like that was like the most craziest thing I could have ever imagined.
Yeah, we talked about that
see.
for a minute for sure.
I just
That's
couldn't believe
wonderful
it.
to hear.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess I kind of fail at this half the episodes, but I don't remember what like my Simon Says was.
That's
Oh,
okay.
You're good.
Yeah,
All that we
no
covered all
worries.
the best lines, and what matters
I'm
is
sure.
that
I'm
you
sure.
gave the correct rating. So I see you in the live chat, Shepherd Rosie, and I love you, and I have to tell this to Kylie. I told this to Ricky privately right after the episode. So after the episode last week, Shepherd Rosie messaged me, and she's like, I can't wait to hear what Kylie has to say about this episode. And I said, yeah, I'm a little worried. Like, what if she doesn't give it a 10? And Shepherd Rosie, no delay, responded, oh, her vote won't count. She has to be there for it to count. I just really want to know what she thought. So I'm so happy to hear, because and to be honest, that was because I said that in the episode. I was like, maybe we'll just cut her out, because we're like,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
if Kylie doesn't
Yeah.
have the same experience and she's not in the same headspace? But we're so happy to hear that you
So
agree
I
with
take
us.
it
It was our
y-
first perfect 10, and
First
we're
perfect
so
10.
happy.
You guys all did 10s too?
Yep.
Oh,
Mhm.
We did.
Okay,
Yes,
very
we
nice.
It was the
did.
first episode that everybody. I kind of got the ball rolling. So
It's a pretty good one.
thanks for that, Josh. You can hear Sudden But Inevitable on your local radio station at 1085 on the FM dial. That's not true. Don't do that. Don't do that. It's not true.
Oh man.
So without any further ado, I think I am going to toss this to my friend Ricky D, the most faithful companion. so that he can read the episode synopsis. I know I didn't tell you beforehand that I was going to have you do this, Ricky. Do you have it ready to go?
I'm not quite ready. If you give me like 20 seconds.
I'm ready.
Here's the thing. I'm the king. I'm the king of understanding. So if you wanted me to, I could vamp this whole time, and nobody would know. Shepard, Rosie, yes, an asterisk, and I also mentioned the asterisk. We'd not try to make Kylie feel bad, and I'm not trying to make Rosie feel bad. It just I thought it was hilarious. So unless you're ready to go, Ricky, I'm gonna let Josh do it.
I am ready to go.
Do it. Well done.
All right. This is episode 9, as it should have been aired. Ariel, written by Alan Croker and Jose Molina. While waiting on the core planet Ariel, Simon hires the crew to help him smuggle River into the local hospital for a thorough diagnostic. In return, he will tell them how to loot the hospital for valuable medicine. Once inside, Jane attempts to turn in Simon and River for the reward. However, the Alliance officer arrests Jane as well to keep the bounty for himself. The crew escapes, but Mal realizes that Jane betrayed Simon and River. Mal arranges for Jane to suffocate when Serenity leaves the planet's atmosphere, but then lets him live.
Yeah, so this is like the quick way to say this is the emotional roller coaster episode, right? But
a little bit.
We'll dive into this. Before we go anywhere, I just want to say, Jose Molina, well crafted. There are no words. Just So somebody had posted to him on Twitter yesterday saying, every time a fan says, "Hey, my favorite line is from a thing you wrote," it's invariably from an episode of that thing that you did not write. And the topic of the episode Ariel came up, and I said, "Hey, if I asked you about that, would that happen to you?" And he said, "Nope." So I said, "I actually can't pick a favorite quote. This is just, I think it's a one long exchange in the language of the series, and it's pitch perfect." And he said, "Thank you." And I screenshotted that and freaked out. And so Jose Molina, thank you so much for just brushing some of the greatness onto our little Twitter feed. I'm blown away just by that. First question that I have for you guys, in any order, I don't care who answers first. Right away, we get an establishment that Book is not with us right now. He is left at an abbey. Do we think Book was left at an abbey, or do we think Book requested to be dropped at an abbey, knowing what was about to go down?
I think the actor took a day off and they needed to just put him out of the episode.
That's not what I asked, Josh.
Well, that's my answer. So
somebody else answered correctly.
I was saying, when you're asking what's about to go down, because we didn't know about the heist until they got there. So are you talking about?
But as soon as Mal and the crew get into Alliance waters, they're going to find some dirt. Book knows that.
Here's the
I
thing.
know that. We all know they're going to find some dirt to play around.
Here's why I asked. The reason that I ask is because in the last few episodes that we've seen, there's been some moments where Shepard Book has mentioned having a familiarity with the Alliance. We saw his identity card get him saved by an Alliance medic. So when they were like, "Hey, we're going to a very Alliance heavy core world," was he like, "Oh, actually, I need to make a stop at the Abbey really quick, if you wouldn't mind, before you go"? Or was Mal like, "Look, I know how we are. It's gonna go south. Just drop him off."
It was probably an
because
unspoken agreement between both of them where, I bet off screen they said, "We're going to go to Ariel," and Mal looked at Shepard. Shepard looked at Mal, and they were kind of like, "Yeah, we should drop you off somewhere."
Yeah, Shepard's going to have to go fix his Bible.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's true. He needs new pages. And I just bring it up because I feel like it could be an interesting thing, right? They immediately established that, and obviously the episode reason is so that he's not there for the dangerous thing where you have to run quickly, right? We get that. Right. But it just I liked that they did it right away. I definitely, we have one of these little family scenes, right, where everybody's sitting around. Jane is being rude. He's being kind of he's picking on Simon, kind of like he's Simon's older brother, even though they don't have that kind of relationship. And everybody's
I got a different I got a different kind of reaction from that. I feel like Jane was picking on him like a bully.
Yeah.
And that's why he got the reaction he got from River,
Right.
because she was sticking up for her brother.
I don't know if she was sticking up for him. I think she like internalized his feelings, and like she has no filter, like we learned, and those feelings just infected her head, and she's like, I'm gonna cut this guy's chest open.
Right.
Well,
that's what he was saying.
I also feel
'Cause he
like
had
those
the
two
knife.
have a mental connection too, where she can feel his thoughts a little bit heavier than like a twin.
Well, it
you know how
seems-
twins have that like mental connection? I feel like they have that. And he was probably thinking at the dinner table, man, I could just stab you right now. And she was like, yeah, I could, and I will. And you know, that's just kind of what I got.
Sean, what did you get from this scene?
So there's two things. One I can actually say, and the other thing I can't say because I know what happens later. So in an attempt to stay the course and where we are, I'm trying to just react to what I see in this episode. And the way I'm kind of looking at it is that we do know that she is kind of as a sponge, right? She sees everything. She acts. So I was kind of disagreeing with you guys. I was arguing with my iPhone a few episodes ago. So to me, I think it was the episode where we get some of the River and Simon's background with their parents. And I think there was some comments about it's weird that the parents are super excited for Simon, but kind of dismissive of River. And I took that as, and again, full disclosure, my wife is a special education teacher. She teaches children with autism. And so I've been around that my adult life, and my mom is also a special ed teacher. So I've literally been around that my life. So I've always identified River as being autistic. And because mostly autism is just a communication barrier. And that's a lot of what River has is the communication, not understanding social cues, things like that. So, and also because of that, of the being autistic, they receive everything. And like the filter, she doesn't have the filter. She just receives everything. Right. So that's a little bit of the same thing. So that's why back to that particular episode, I think the parents kind of see that. And my wife and I have seen parents that are a little uncomfortable or embarrassed, or they don't know how to deal with a child with special needs. That's why they lean on Simon, because I'm using air quotes for the podcast, air quotes, he's normal, right? Mm-hmm. And they know how to deal with him. So that's my episode backtrack. I apologize for going there, but
no,
you're good. I agree with you 100%. And I think that actually is playing out in this scene, right? It's not that she's looking at Simon going, Simon needs to be defended. She's looking at Jane going, I see a knife. I see malicious intent. I see potential danger, and it's all coming from him. And how do I mirror that? Oh, I mirror that by grabbing a knife. And I wrote, I forgot about this scene. I was definitely taken aback when River just pulled that knife across Jane's chest like she was drawing curtains. Like, so casual. Just drag this across your chest. Like, definitely stood out to me. I was like, oh, I forgot that happened.
I kind of thought the doctor was gonna stand up and punch him in the face, like finally stand up to the bully.
It's not proper.
Mm-hmm. But okay. But it kind of seemed like it was boiling up to that point where he was, he's been picked on too much and he's gonna actually punch him in the face. And like in my notes, I was like, pretty sure doctor's going to ... Holy shit, River went crazy.
Never mind.
Like in the middle of my writing notes, it was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So River's gonna.
So then we get this. We get this scene where the doctor is patching Jane up, and Jane is talking about him like he's not there, right? And Mal is like, "Hey, what's your problem? What are you gonna do about it?" And then Jane gives this performance that's almost convincing, right? He goes, what about you? What about Kylie? What about Inara? What about everybody else on this ship? What if she comes after you guys? And if you look right in his eyes, you can see that that's just worry for himself that he knows well enough how to mask as worry for other people. So it was really, really well acted by Baldwin in that scene, I thought.
this was really an episode of growth for Jane. He had multiple like little moments where he really grew, and we got to see that and how it reflected inside of him.
But yeah,
it was forced, but it altered him. It altered him, and I think it was a good moment for his character.
I think Simon and Mal all experienced some growth in this episode for sure. To your point, Ricky, what were you going to say, Sean?
I was just going to simply say that guilt is a powerful motivator, and at the end of this episode, you know what Jane experiences, I think, is ultimately guilt and shame, which is probably emotions that person has never experienced, because he's a dude that will kill for money, even if you're just bothering him, you know. But in this moment at the end of this episode, and not to jump too far ahead, but you know, he's feeling both guilt and shame of what he did. And you know, like you said, again, you're right. His growth is forced on him by his own actions and then the actions of his captain. But you're right, it's powerful on him.
I think Mal pounding that word crew into his head so many times over this episode, and then at the end when he was hanging out on the bridge, or not on the bridge, but the landing gear, the ramp. He was like, man, if it was the other way around, Simon would be out here. This isn't about me. This is about the actions that I engaged in. This isn't me and Mal. This is what I did.
Well, and to your point, Sean, I think, like you said, not to go all the way to the end, but there's plenty to talk about, even if we do that.
Sure.
No, I mean, it happens. That's why we give the synopsis. But I think that shame that does come across so well in that scene from Jane is what Mal recognizes and what makes Mal ultimately change his mind, because he's going, okay, old Jane would never have said, tell them I got shot or tell them something else happened. Don't tell them what I did. Old Jane would say, yeah, tell them what happened and then tell them why you did it. And I bet you they'll mutiny. Like he would have just said, I don't care who knows what I did. Tell them it was for the money. And so I think Mal recognizes that. But here's a thing that I noticed when they're doing the like breakdown of what the plan is for the heist, right? When Simon's explaining, okay, hey, I've got a job for you. Here's what we're going to do. Did you notice that there's an open space in the circle that they're standing in for us? And then the camera just slides right into that space, and we are now standing in the circle with the rest of the characters, and we're part of the plan. That's why the camera is handheld and looking back and forth in all the different directions, because that's our POV, right? We're like, oh, what are they all saying? That kind of thing. I really loved the effect of that scene. For a minute, I was like, what's with all the handheld shots? And then I was like, oh, because that's how my head moves. I get it.
Well, I feel like that was such a late 90s heist movie move, too, where they're going 100%. Through the plan. And and then we're gonna go over here and we're gonna make sure we get our suits, and then we're gonna make sure to have those on when we put in our thumbprints, and we're gonna get over this way, and then it's gonna and then the camera pans each time you do something else, and like I feel like that was a really good homage to the heist movie.
Yes,
yes. I wrote down love the heist percussion in the background. It's got very heist movie.
Yeah, and so on Cheap Seats, we talk a lot about movie tropes and TV tropes. And,
that's definitely one of them.
Yeah, it is. The heist. So, I mean, like, you could even boil this down to, this is the Ocean's 11 episode of series, right? I feel like, I mean, and you guys know this, especially if you like, Star Wars or Star Trek, excuse me. There's almost always at least one diehard episode in each series of Star Trek. There's always that one episode where it's like the one person versus the many kind of a thing. So I love these tropes. And so not only do we get that this is the heist trope, we get the trope. And I love this technique that they do in storytelling is, I'm going to tell you the heist. I'm going to explain the plan, most of it, or sometimes all of it, but usually just a little, enough. And while I'm explaining, I'm going to then show you we're doing it. We need a ship. So now we're at the junkyard. There's the ship.
Getting the ship.
The uniforms. Like, I like that way of storytelling.
Yeah.
Because one, it saves time, but two, it gives you something to do besides stand there watching Simon talk.
Yeah.
Well done, Jose Molina.
Which, by the way, dang Doc, you're full of surprises. Like, has he just been sitting here thinking of this plan for weeks?
So
like,
here's the thing,
if
right?
we ever get to a hospital that we can do this with, I have just the perfect plan.
Remember back to the pilot, Josh. He said, "Okay, I'm a genius."
I don't,
right?
but
Like I'm a high level genius who's
Mhm.
very sought after for my intellect. My sister makes me look like an idiot child. So he is like
okay.
capable of some very high level, 4D chess and maneuverability and stuff. It's just that he's not in his element. And as we see specifically in this episode, God, Josh, you're such a good podcaster, that when he is in his element, he crushes it and he knows exactly how to operate, as it were. So it's a very specific, it's meant to illustrate, yes, when he is where he knows how to be, he is 100% in control and cool, calm, and collected. Especially, I mean, that whole hospital is his area. Even when he's being held by Alliance forces, he's like, "You're gonna do this because this, and this." He knows that arena. He knows what he's doing.
I loved him. Kind of like you get to see the actual doctor in this episode. I really, really liked him pulling that little guy aside and being like, why would you do this? And like scolding him. He doesn't even work there. That's like me going to a different store of my company and being like, "What is going on here?"
She doesn't even go here.
I had one question about currency in the Firefly universe.
Do it.
When the first little vial that Simon pulls out, he goes, "This is worth 20 platinum or 50 credits." Mm-hmm. How is a credit worth that much?
Good here.
Yeah.
How are credits worth that much more than a platinum?
Inflation and artificial control by the evil alliance. Obviously, they're gonna overvalue their own currency over a rebel currency, right?
Well, it's the same thing.
I'm not messing with you. That's probably like actually the answer, like given the show's subject material.
Yeah, it's
like we have
goods,
now,
though.
right? Like I can give you $100 or 1 Bitcoin or something like that. Like it's
right.
Or a bar of gold or something. Name your, gold press Latin, whatever you want to use.
It's fungible. Here comes the ignorance. So, when they were in the graveyard, the junkyard, right, and they're looking for pieces, and Wash and Kylie are like,
I was wondering it. Wait,
they're like, why are we here? Why are we in this graveyard? And then Kylie remembers, oh, why did I say graveyard again?
Yeah.
She goes, oh, I just remembered I love junkyards, right? She's like, yeah, trudging through, like, look at all this trash. And she's like, wait a minute, I love junkyards. Here's some junk that I get to play with. I liked that character moment of hers.
But during that junkyard scene, who noticed what Wash picked up off the ground?
It was the part that they needed.
The catalyzer.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. He found a catalyzer just lying around in the junkyard.
The last episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
that piece that they needed.
And it plays into the evil Captain Sash having said, that's a nothing part. Why do you need it? It's like it's literally laying around in junkyards.
Yeah, but it's everything when you don't have it.
Right.
And again, this being aired out of order, none of that makes any freaking sense.
Yeah.
Speaking of, when was this aired? Because according to some internet sites, episode 9 was not Ariel. It was War Stories, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is one of the ones that was only slightly out of order. But I think the episodes leading up to it were not the correct order in the first place. So it wouldn't have mattered that it was only one off. It would still be way off. I know.
To set it up for failure.
The thing with all of these character moments that we've had so far, right? We've had character moments with Simon, River, Mal, the doctor, Jane, everybody, right? They all track so well because, so when he's teaching Mal this vocabulary, right? We know that Mal has a history with vocabulary words and that he loves to talk eloquently, and he's having trouble doing it because he has to get his vocabulary words from Zoe. You'll notice that Zoe has no problem saying the words. She just doesn't know what they mean. Mm-hmm. So she has a trouble remembering the order, but she can say the words no problem. And then I mean, Jane says what Jane says, right? He's like, if I
Put
wanted
up the
to school,
banner.
then I'd have gone to school. I think Jane
Yeah.
is
My
probably
note says
Jane
Jane
is
struggles with learning.
so my note says Jane is a kinetic learner because he learns fine when he's touching stuff and when he's, cleaning his gun and making IDs with a knife, which to the other character point would track, right? He's an excellent tracker, as we saw in the last episode. So why wouldn't he be great at the opposite of tracking, which is going incognito and blending in and doing that stuff? I really love that all these character moments make so much sense. And this is another moment of proof that Jane isn't dumb. He's just smart in a really, really specific way and dumb in some other ways, which I guess makes him a realistic character. And it makes him so well written in this episode. I'm not going to say the name
Actually,
again because I don't want to sound like that guy, but
I had a really, really relatable moment with Jane this episode when he
please share.
said, if I'd wanted schooling, I'd have gone to school. And I can literally say that to people. So I
Yes,
think I'm going to
true.
steal that line from Jane for the rest of my life. And if anyone ever tries to give me shit about like saying the wrong word, I'll be like, you know what? If I wanted schooling, I'd have gone to school. So
Yes, I love it. And
one of the most
be
relatable moments
to a
for me
shirt.
with Jane.
So
I
go ahead, Sean.
no, I was going to say I'm looking forward to when we were getting to the hashtag is Jane dumb part. So the one thing I think this episode in particular, thank you, that in particular that this episode highlights is that we obviously see that Jane is crafty, he's resourceful, and obviously he's good in a fight. And except towards the end, for some reason, it took him like an hour and a half to beat up that guard, but whatever. But
hey, he had to use his whole body. He was beating him up like a worm.
But I mean, Simon Simon knocks that guy out. I mean, he does the knee to the neck, so he passes out. He's not killing the guy; he's just making him pass out. But what I think it definitely does show is that Jane is not a. You're gonna laugh, or maybe not. I don't know, but like it reminds me of the Back to the Future 3. When they keep accusing Marty of not thinking fourth dimensionally. Like I'm gonna drive into that wall. He goes, "No, it won't be there in the past. You're not thinking fourth dimensionally." Jane doesn't think like that. So all he thinks of is the immediate now, right? It's just now. And so I think that's part of his problem is he's not good at planning. Mal can see, obviously, if you call the feds, you're going to get pinched. That's obvious to Mal because he can see into not the future, but he understands things. Whereas Jane
He sees the variables. Jane doesn't look at all the different angles of what could happen. So
it's just once again proof Jane is a blunt instrument.
And all he cares about is money. The money was there. The money was good.
Money was
whatever he says.
I think that's a good summation of that. So I really like that. Excuse me. I really like that Simon trusts River enough in this moment to just give her the real plan, right? He just gives it to her straight. Like, here's what we're going to do. It's very dangerous. He doesn't treat her like a child or anything. Like, hey, we're going to, go to a castle and you're going to lay on a magical. He was just like, here's what we have to do. It's dangerous. I trust you, though. I know you can do this. Are we good? And then she's like, yes, we're good. I'm, fully locked in. Everything's fine. And then this is the first moment of this episode where I teared up because their dynamic is so true to life, right? Like the sibling love and the true vulnerability that you can see on both of those actors in that scene is very powerful, very, very affecting. So that was the first time I teared up in this episode. Josh and Kylie, my first specific question for you: how did you feel about Jane on the ride in when they're on the transport and they're like, Jane, are you good? And he's like trying to recite his lines and he's like, don't worry about me, everything's fine. How are you guys feeling at that moment?
I just knew he was going to mess something up, I suppose.
But did you think it would be intentional or did you think he was going to make a screw up?
Oh, I don't think I thought it was going to be intentional. No, I just inevitably thought that he would mess it all up.
I liked the conversation
Josh?
between Mal and Jane. You got a little stabbed
Yeah.
the other day. Make anyone a little ornery.
Yeah, I totally get
Well-
why you'd freak out about that.
Yeah, there was a lot of
Yeah.
foreshadowing in this.
There was
like
yeah.
heavy, like in my notes right here. Everything will be fine when we wake up. Always a terrible foreshadow. River
Yeah, don't ever
freaking out
say
doesn't
that.
help either. So, and then Mal talking to Jane was even more foreshadowing. It didn't like click. Obviously, I could see it. I could read it. The foreshadowing, but until the actual thing came to light with Jane, I was like, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Something crazy is gonna go down. Something crazy, and something crazy did
I'm
go
gl-
down.
I'm glad that there was some mystery in it for you. I was worried that Josh would like nudge Kylie and be like, he's gonna betray him, and then this is gonna happen. So I'm really glad that didn't happen.
I try not to
actually-
do that to Kylie anymore. She gets really mad at me when I do that because
That's good.
I try to keep it to
agree with
myself.
Kylie.
It's pretty
Yeah.
bad.
I agree with her 100%. I figured out where J.J. Abrams first equated lens flare with the future, and it is this hospital. So you go into the hospital,
Wow.
and every freaking camera in this hospital is staring down the barrel of like a painting work light for some reason.
Why-
There's just flare on
In my-
everything.
In my notes, why does it look like a horror movie? Is what I had said.
Yeah, well, I mean, the answer to that is because it's a horrible place and it's meant to induce unease and a sense of dread. And, this is not the kind of space we're used to. We're used to enclosed, warm colored spaces like Serenity, not big, open, neutral,
Sure.
or cool colored spaces. This is
And I
very
guess
bad.
that's one of the best things about this show in particular is the coloring of different. Like last episode, it was at its best, where
Yes.
in the past it was a different lighting, and in the present it was a different lighting, and you get different feelings from that. I always love when filmmakers and stuff can actually use that to their advantage. You know what I mean? Like they know how to use lighting to
When
their
they speak
advantage
the right
because-
language.
Right, because like with this, immediately the second they walk into the hospital, I was like, oh, what's going on here? And it was great. It was great to be put at unease right away.
And I really like the immediate, like subtle point of criticism of bureaucracy in general, where they don't actually end up needing any of the lines they rehearsed. He's like,
Yeah.
hey, we have 2 dead bodies, and they're like, cool, get out of my face, don't care. And they're all like, oh,
Cortical
okay.
electrodes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then he word vomits, and I'm just like, oh my god.
He just wanted to say he had been practicing those lines for like a week.
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah,
there's
like
no
that.
way I'm getting out of this without saying my goddamn lines.
Ugh.
It's fair.
That's how I would be. I'd be like, you forced these lines down my throat for a week, and
Oh, sorry.
I'm doing it. Go.
You mentioned the like bureaucracy that's so obvious walking onto the Alliance ship or the Alliance, I guess Ariel, the Alliance world. One thing that I thought it was cool that they made note of is when we were watching Jamestown, I had a moment where I was like, oh, are we stealing from the poor? But then we went to, no, it's from the magistrate. We don't have to worry about it. And then we have this other moment where it's like, we're stealing from a hospital? No, don't worry about it.
Let me explain.
It's a bad guy
yeah.
hospital. It's a bad
They'll
guy hospital.
They'll be resupplied in
Tons
an
of
hour.
money.
It's
Right.
fine.
It's not that it's a bad guy hospital. It's that they have a very robust supply chain and want to avoid looking incapable. So I'm really tempted to go further on that exact point, but I'm gonna refrain right now.
you can't.
So I really like that Simon sucks at laying low. Like we've already established before that Simon sucks at reading a room, right? And this is another thing that tracks with his character, that he can't lay low. And I like that it's a trait that the Tam siblings share. River is there. She knows it's a dangerous place, but she also sees this guy in trouble, and she looks at Simon terrified and says, you have to help him. And then
He
Simon
is going
actually,
to die.
Yeah, and Simon gives her this look of like, I shouldn't. And then immediately his face resolves to, but I'm going to. And he walks over there. And I gotta say, the show does medical drama really convincingly. Like, that was quite the adept spin into a suddenly new genre, and it was very well executed, I thought.
And one of the great things about being in the future, you can make up words and it doesn't matter because we don't know what they mean. You know what I'm saying? It's not like there's actually giving you push 3 cc's of ibuprofen because we know what that means. When he says
Dilaftin.
Yeah, exactly. Is that a thing? We don't know. I mean, maybe there's a medical student that listens to the show and says, "Oh no, that's a thing." That but I just assume
we're always willing to learn here.
We also got 2 shots of those wireless defibrillator things. Did you notice the defibrillators he used were wireless?
Okay, quick question.
And they were spoons.
Yeah. I think I used those to cook eggs with. Yeah.
If one of you guys with a functional cortex connection can let me know, isn't the way that a defibrillator works to actually stop the heart so that it can be like restarted on the correct rhythm or something like that? Like it fixes arrhythmia by stopping it, and then it can be.
So defibrillator, I think, is mainly used for like heart palpitations. So when it gets off beat, it like recenters it. The paddle,
but doesn't it do that?
Paddle is like the electric shock thing. We need Justin. Where's Justin?
Well, anyways, my question is that when Zoe just casually tapped that guy with those, did she stop that guy's heart? Like, is he immediately dead, or was he like knocked out? Like, that's what I wanted to know. I don't know how a defibrillator works.
I've got it on Google if you want.
Yep.
Go, Ricky.
All right. Defibrillators are devices that restore a normal heartbeat by sending an electric pulse or shock to the heart. They are used to prevent or correct an arrhythmia, a heartbeat that is uneven or is too slow or too fast. Defibrillators can also restore the heart's beating if the heart suddenly stops. So I don't think it does anything to stop the heart. It just evens it out or restarts it.
But I mean,
but
if you think about
shock
it,
somebody like that.
Well, but to fix a rhythm, like an arrhythmia, it would have to stop for half a second so that when it beats again, it's correct, right? I just am worried that Zoe casually murdered that guy. That's all I'm wondering about.
Do you think she cared, though?
Well, he's an evil doctor.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's killed other people.
Go ahead, Sean.
The way I'm looking at it simply is that the camera keeps looking back at the guy on the ground. Zoe keeps looking back at this guy to check to see if he's going to wake up. I think that's the show's way of reminding us that she didn't just murder this doctor.
I guess,
It was manslaughter because it was incidental.
I mean, maybe he eventually passes out because he dies on his own vomit or something. I don't know. But we're going to leave him on the cold floor.
The pacemaker.
Yeah.
I do want to say that the guy that plays that doctor, his name is Tom Virtue, and he is credited as the pompous doctor. So even in the credits, he deserves to kind of be shocked.
That's like putting your script reader right into your character title. Like, that guy doesn't have to read his script. He just has to remember the gist of his lines.
Yeah, he was in a lot of stuff. He was in, that pompous doctor has been in like everything. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., American Horror Story, Iron Man 3, Mindy Project, Children's Hospital, NCIS. Like, that guy is popular.
Everybody's been in NCIS. I mean, I'm surprised.
I mean, it's been on for 29 years or something.
Known for Even Stevens.
He's the dad. I was like, I know him from somewhere. It's totally Even Stevens.
Now, how old do you feel, Sean?
All right, so let's have a moment here for Summerglow's eyes that are just bathed in emotion this entire episode. The expression on Summerglow's face that she is able to communicate, it just blows me away.
I had a moment during this episode where I was like, she is just beautiful. And her character doesn't really need to be beautiful, so it's not focused on very often in the show, but wow.
Yeah.
Who are we talking about?
And you're not
River.
The girl that plays River.
Okay,
Summerglow. So it's like she has she's the character, like you said, Ricky, isn't coded as like attractive or like a a potential mate for any of the other characters or anything like that. But that's what I love about her, is that she is such a complete and damaged and difficult person, and manages just transcendent grace and beauty despite all that, which I think kind of goes back to what Sean was saying earlier. When you've got this communication barrier, it can be difficult to understand, somebody enough to consider them beautiful. And I think, to your point, Ricky, we get enough understanding of River in this episode to go, when she looks at that correct angle in particular, it's like, oh wow, she is beautiful. And this whole thing is just, it opened a whole new dimension of River for me personally. And like I said, I think it's mostly in Summerglow's face. I think it's mostly just the way that she emotes. If you guys have any River or Summerglow gushing to do, this would probably be a good time so we can get it all out of the way. I know that that's how I am.
The only thing that I want to say about her and her arc throughout the series is simply that I appreciate that she's never sexualized.
Yeah.
Like, I know we kind of have that already in Honora.
Well, and Kylie last episode, kind of.
Kylie a little bit, but even then, it was more of comedy than sexual.
Zoe and Wash have an in-bed scene together.
They do.
Right. He's saying the River character in particular isn't sexual.
Right.
But even the Zoe part, it's more sweet because it's like husband-wife kind of thing. It's like we never ever. Maybe this is a spoiler. I don't know. I'm sorry, but like there's never a moment with River. I mean, where she's in something that would be considered like she's never portrayed in any kind of sexual. And I think that's actually great that they do that in this show. Is that
she never gets slave laid? That's good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and then she did they did the thing where she was nude in the first episode, right? Where she was like in the case and everything, but it wasn't like meant to be like, it wasn't shot in a leery way. It wasn't shot in a way that felt creepy or anything like that.
Right.
So here's the thing. Mal and Zoe are using their own hands, right? So did they get fake fingerprints and I missed that? Or does the Alliance not have their prints? Or they do and Mal and Zoe don't care that they do? Or
I think they kind of covered that in the montage when they were getting all their suits ready. I don't think they did fingerprints, but they alluded to it because they did cut out the pictures for the IDs and go through like different scans and stuff. But it was really quick.
Hack in and put their fingerprints into the system or something.
Well, Kylie was able to hack in and tell them where to go when they were running. So I would assume she could probably hack in and get the fingerprints uploaded,
Does that mean she's the guy in the chair?
Absolutely.
She's the guy in the chair.
She is. She's
which makes sense because she's the mechanic too.
Tank in the Matrix, or
I can't.
Or Ned in Spider-Man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's also that I don't know. Ned from Spider-Man, that reference I'm making, and back to our Ocean's 11 analogy. It's whatever that guy is. I can't remember his name.
You even go so far as being Emilio Estevez from Mission Impossible.
Yeah,
he was one of the first guys in the chair.
But then he got on an elevator, and that's really bad.
That's why he should have never gotten out of the chair, man. That's what happens when you get out of the chair. You get smashed in an elevator. Emilio. We learned that from Emilio.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is again, the reason we give the synopsis at the beginning is so that we don't really, if we go out of order, it doesn't really matter. But I will take this moment just to say, Josh and Kylie, do you have any notes that you feel like we've skipped, like chronologically, you feel like you missed getting out? And if not, what is your next note that you guys have?
I loved the death pods. They're not body bags. They're like little death pods.
Those look exactly like what's strapped to the roof of every third Subaru in Colorado.
Yep. That's actually what they are.
Okay, I don't know if that's great. If it's like for kayak or what they're supposed to be, but
Isn't it for a sled?
I immediately recognized it as a roof rack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%. Just some roof rack. Of course, my heart was like, oh, it's a photon torpedo encasing, but it wasn't. It was a roof rack for a Subaru Outback.
And then later on, I had mentioned now they're medicine pods, from death pods to medicine pods, because they filled those things up. Holy cow!
What a beautiful dichotomy, right? You take the fake dead people out, you put in the life-giving medicine that will also bring money to the crew, which will save their lives. Yeah, it was really solid, and it wasn't like beat you over the head level of like, here's this obvious visual metaphor. It was like all of this stuff tracks, and it makes internal logical sense that they would do this. So it doesn't feel contrived, it doesn't feel forced. It flows so well.
Yeah. Kylie,
so
did you have any other notes from where we're at right now?
Not out of chronological order. I'm good.
Okay.
We get the okay, I wrote this down just because I think it was I want to know if anybody knows anything about the production, because I know we have had a couple of notes on the production. Is it just me, or is the hallway leading away from the medicine locker definitely made out of the same material that the Velociraptor shipping container from the start of Jurassic Park is made out of? It's got like that weird pattern that almost looks like unpunched out razor blades or something, with all the light filtering through it. Is that just me? Am I a huge nerd right now?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
I mean, you are, but I don't think that's because of this. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah.
It was.
I mean, it kind
had
of
nothing
is.
to do with this. That's all that matters. Well, it's probably the way I was raised.
Oh, hang on. I have something for this.
You are a huge nerd.
Nice.
Every Monday morning from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. for your drive to work.
Traffic, weather, traffic, and weather.
On the sixes.
On the sixes, I was gonna say on the twos, whatever. Yeah.
Thank you. I like that so once Mal and Zoe figure out that Simon and River are stuck with feds, there's no discussion of what the plan is. There's no, okay, what's the best course of action? They just start loading guns. They're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because they know that's
Almost
how you
like they
deal
kind of
with the
knew that
alliance.
this was gonna go down. That they were like,
well,
yeah,
to me it was okay, we're dealing with the alliance, and the alliance has our family. We don't need a plan. We go in shooting. We ask questions later.
We're going into this evil hospital full of evil doctors and evil patients, and we're going to do what it takes to get our good guys back.
Everyone we have to.
Yes.
Yeah. If we're before we skip ahead, we missed the biggest thing. We haven't heard it in I think 2 episodes. But whenever Jane leads Doc and River out to the back hallway, we get "You are bound by law."
By law.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to bring that up because I did like that whole scene where Jane realized, oh my God, getting double crossed here.
Well,
and
it was
that
like
was the first part of his evolution into maybe being an okay, because he was like, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't have been an asshole.
There was a moment where he was watching Simon do that 3D image scanning, and Simon was telling Jane everything that he was seeing, and Jane was just like, oh no, what have I done?
Yeah.
Like these aren't the kind of people that I can betray.
Yeah.
But it's too late.
What did you say about the effects when he was looking at River's brain?
Oh, that it was some Wakanda shit.
Oh, some Wakanda shit. That's right. Yeah.
Because it's all he's turning it around
and that again with the effects of the show. Those are some great effects for 2001, 2002.
2002.
It was pretty spot on.
I loved watching her brain light up. Right, like a moment before everything went bad, she's like, you see all the colors in her brain go off. And to your point, when that guy came down the stairs, I was like, this snivelly douchebag is gonna get to bound by law these people. Like
bound by law.
I don't know how I feel about letting this guy bound by law somebody. It just
he didn't have an English accent though.
Bound by
he
law.
didn't have an English accent. I mean, he did. Here's the thing: the line was delivered, or the line was well written, and it was well delivered. His face just doesn't match sheriff or like lawman to me. His face matched like evil space captain Sash from the last episode to me. So if you're gonna bound by law people, you need to look official. That's
Bound by
you
law.
how I
need to have
feel.
a sick mustache that twirls around.
He
you
just
come
he
out,
just seems like
man,
the
bound
kind
by
of dude
law.
that he got
Bound
a
by
desk
law.
job. Yeah, he got a desk job at the Force because he sucks at something, and so the only
Yep.
reason why he's making this caller is because Jane called him. He was the dude what
Yes.
answered the phone, and so that's why he was all he's so excited because he was going to get his big day because he was going to bring in the Tams. Like this was going to be the biggest bust of his career because because he sucks.
And he expected to get the reward. So it's like, I'm sorry, I don't think cops get the reward when they catch a criminal who's wanted, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
maybe they do, and I've been totally misled. I just don't. But again, that's probably meant to be a commentary on the corruption and the bureaucracy of the Alliance, where they'll go, hey, whoever you are, it doesn't matter if it's your job or not, you bring them in, you claim that prize. Maybe that's what that's meant to be. I'm not.
And
Actually-
apparently that prize is meeting the Men in Black and all of their freaking brain
Their gadgets.
killing
Explodey
things.
devices.
high frequency things.
The bleed
What's that
stick.
ring? The what?
What? Oh, this is my wedding ring. I was saying hands of blue.
Yeah, no, I'm
Oh,
looking.
I was
I
like,
got,
are you
I got a
showing
ring
me?
also with the blue on the too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
It's
and
much
it-
better than having a ring that I could destroy or lose and then feel really bad about. So
Yeah, it's just squishy. So yeah, can we stay here for a minute about the Alliance,
Yeah.
the Feds, because
I like your thinking, Roy.
these two dudes are the worst part of the episode for me. For this reason only. Well, a couple of reasons. One, they're obviously just one-dimensional. They're evil. I mean, like they're the evil of evil, right? You know, the one guy has a scary look on his face when he's like, "You talked to them?" Like,
Yeah.
well, of course you talked to them. You didn't send out, instructions never to talk to them. But whatever. So then they pull out the bleed stick, which I get. How does it work? Like, is there a front?
High frequency, man. That
Is there
high
a back?
frequency.
Like, do you?
yeah,
if
but
you
those
put-
guys have ears, Josh.
like if that thing went
They're
off,
the men in freaking black from the X-Files. They are immune to the high frequency. They have trained for it for years. My mind is made up.
The men in black aren't immune to the neuralizer. They have to put
That's why
on
they-
sunglasses.
That's why, and there's a front. There's a
These guys
front
are wearing
thing.
contacts.
I
And
think
earbuds.
Sean
Their
is making a
ears?
valid,
Yeah.
no. I think Sean is making a valid point.
It's-
I'm
That's
sorry.
a very
I'm
the,
sorry.
the device is way too nondescript. It's like a tube. You could just fall on that and actually.
Yeah, but then
kill
we
a
wouldn't have
block.
gotten that cool scene of that guy like bleeding from all of his seams.
Okay,
And that's
but-
that almost makes it forgivable.
But does it though? Like, it's terrifying. Yes, it's incredibly terrifying to die that way. It sounds painful, but guns are just as terrifying. Just shoot people. I don't understand why we have.
No,
to
you
focus
have
them.
to be menacing and let people
It's
know
this-
that the way that I'm gonna kill you is way
Is
worse than the way
I-
that guy's gonna
suffer.
kill you.
Right.
I know, but there's no
I'm
reason.
probably gonna cut out part of your brain too.
Yeah,
I think I hear where you're coming from, Sean, where it's like you don't have to layer evil on these guys like 15 times, right? You can just like Roy, are you seriously talking about the movie in the
Yeah.
effing group chat? Kick him out of the group chat. Are you kidding me? I'm not kidding. Get rid of him. Unless he can calm down. That's not cool, Roy. You don't need to layer
Oh.
15 levels of evil on this guy, right? Like we know they're evil. They have weird faces. They've killed people. They're in suits. We don't need them to be like a maximum level of evil. To Sean's point, I think I agree with where you're coming from.
But they
But
still are
to
maximum
Ricky's
level
point-
evil.
no, they are.
And to Ricky's point, I want them to bleed from all of their pieces because they're really
Their
bad.
seams.
And, yeah,
Their
and
seams.
Right where they
Yeah.
got seamed together.
Yeah,
yeah, the finger. Yeah,
They,
I mean,
they
and
went
the-
all stigmata on it. He just like, bleeding from the eyes and
and
everywhere.
that's pushing. I mean, that's pushing. TV 14 whatever level for 2002. I mean, that's
TV-14.
whatever it's called. You know what I'm saying, right? Like that's
Yeah.
something that I saw on FX today. I would be like, okay, it's on FX, fine. But if that was on an episode of NCIS, I'd say, oh, they've gone another level.
I'm pretty sure they have that stuff on Nickelodeon. Like cartoons will have that sort of face melting stuff, and kids are like, "Oh, the face melted."
Yeah,
but with slime, right? So in every chase scene that I've ever seen in a movie or a TV film, right? People would benefit hugely from just closing the last door they went through. Just close the last one, so that when somebody runs into a room of 15 doors, they don't go, oh, they went through that one over there because they didn't close it. Like, just close the last door you went through. I know it's a trope, and I'm not upset about it. It's just like...
I get yelled at in Warzone all the time for not closing doors behind me. Are you serious? You didn't close the door?
Yeah, because people know where you are. Kylie and Josh, when you guys were watching this, and there's a couple of scenes where you feel like Jane is going to get away with having done this, right? Like, it looks like maybe nobody knows that he did it, and they're just going to put him back on the ship and everything's okay. How are you feeling in those scenes?
Oh, upset. I guess this whole time I was really expecting him to redeem himself, and I guess it's not too late. I mean, we've got more episodes to watch, but it's very disappointing that, somebody who is not integritous is on the crew. So
yeah,
I don't like
Right.
it.
And go ahead.
No, go for it.
I felt like those times where there was a point where Jane could have gotten away with it and the Tams could have been bound by law. Those points, Jane had already decided what he had done was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So even though he might have made the whatever the bounty is, 1 trillion credits, space credits, he still wouldn't have felt good about it, I don't think. Well,
the problem is it took so long for
bit.
him to feel like that, though. Like, it took all those other things happening for him to feel bad. And so I think at the end, with Mal making him realize, like, he really, like, emphasized the point of, you really fucked up here, man. Like, you should not have done this. And, next time you decide to stab me in the back, have the guts to do it to my face. Like, he was...
Well, and it's not... to me, it's not that it's like... I'm not worried, like, did Jane learn his lesson? What I'm wondering is, if Mal didn't know that Jane had done this, okay, and let's even say Jane did learn his lesson, but Mal didn't know that this whole thing had gone down, would you be okay with that? Or would you be like, no, there needs to be consequences for Jane now? Or would you be worried like, oh, there's going to be huge consequences later? Because I was like, even coming back to a rewatch, I felt personally betrayed by Jane, right? Like, when Mal is yelling at him and he tells him, you betrayed my crew, you can hear him almost crying in that, right? Because he doesn't relish having to scream this at Jane. Like, he didn't want to have to explain why you are, like, this is family, you don't betray family, right? And it was such a well acted scene on both sides of the glass there. But I was just wondering if you had any moments where you were like, now I want Jane off the ship, like, I don't want him part of the crew anymore, like, I'm done.
So actually, in my notes, Kylie says just go without them, except they need the doctor, and River's okay. Just Jane. Screw Jane. Leave him behind.
Yeah.
That's something we discussed. So yeah, I mean, I think the crew would have been probably better off without him. They could find some muscle somewhere else,
And that's a good point, Roy. It does give Mal a different kind of, like, if Mal had used this, like, if he had said, oh, I'll tell him when I'm ready or something like that, and used it as leverage on Jane, that would give Mal like a different color to him. But I think that moment where Mal decides to keep him, I don't think even Mal knew that he was going to do that. I think Mal went down there fully intending, this is it,
to murk that dude.
Yeah, well, not even. It's just like, turnabout is fair play, bro. Like, So Jane does show remorse though, and that's, I think, like we were saying earlier, that's, I think, why Mal makes that change, because Jane actually does say, don't tell him what I did, give him something else, because he's showing remorse and regret, and Mal knows that in Jane those are new things, and that's growth. So I think that's why he keeps him around. And when Simon asks, or is like looking up at Jane like he's his big brother, and he's like, he was amazing, you should have seen him, he was taking guys out left and right, it was so great, thank you so much, Jane. Jane uses another line that he's heard Mal say here. He says, you're part of my crew.
Yeah.
And he, again, it's just Jane being insincere but having the correct words. So Jane's not dumb, he's an opportunist, and he's not eloquent. The next notes that I have are segment answers. So if you guys have any notes, let's go ahead and open up the floor. Josh and Kylie, if you'd like to go first.
Go ahead.
Okay, when they're running away from the scientists, the X-Files, MIB dudes, I really liked how Jane is hitting the handle with like a fire extinguisher or something.
No, it's his Alliance gun. It's the pulse
the gun that looks like a fire extinguisher. But he's hitting the door, and then all of a sudden Mal blasts the door and saves the day like the cowboy he is. Even the shot was kind of like, they should have had a whistle behind him with like a harmonica. Like it was perfect. It was a perfect Western shot of like, here I am to save the day.
And the look he gives is great, right? Like he doesn't have to say anything. He just gives them a look like, let's go. Yeah, the head nod, just let's go. That's great.
Yep. What you got?
It is a moment of almost like Mal can't even believe they were that lucky. Like, then let's just go. Go ahead, Kylie. Sorry.
I get the only last thing that I have in my notes is at the very end. I thought it was cool that Simon seemed to have some sort of concoction that he had made, and he said for River, it's time to wake up.
Time to wake up.
So I'm like, oh, what did he learn? So that's exciting.
Yeah. I guess
I really love that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Josh.
The last thing I had was just Kaylee's summary of the whole episode. Like I wanted to use Kaylee's summary for the episode.
Yeah.
Well, basically they killed Simon and River, stole a bunch of supplies, and then everyone got caught, and so they're out saving them.
Oh, look, they're back.
Yeah.
Yeah, they come now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. Ricky D, did you have any other notes that you would like to cover before we let Sean take the floor?
Sure, I've got just a couple of short ones. How adorable was Wash with his backwards hat?
Oh yeah,
He's so cute.
I guess
I
yeah.
There was something very juvenile about it, and so cute. He looked like a little flyboy.
He was playing heist. Like the rest of them were on a heist, and Wash was playing heist. Yes. And it was adorable. I mean, he was also driving his ass off, right? But like,
sure,
he was in heist mood. He was like, "You guys, let's say cool one-liners to each other." Like he was that guy that was very excited to be on his first heist. I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sean. Did you have any other notes from the episode you'd like to get? Oh, Ricky, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
One more real quick one. My job entails a lot of driving around all over Colorado. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. And lately I've been listening to an audiobook where there's been a lot of British accents going on. Mm-hmm. So when Mal hit Jane in the face with that wrench, in my head I go, "Oh, spanner to the noggin."
Nice.
It was a very British moment for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Cute.
But that's it. That's all I've got.
I dig that. Sorry. Okay. Apologies. Sean, go ahead. Do you have any other notes from this episode that you would like to cover before we move on?
Yeah, just a handful. Like couple little moments of acting that I really like, some acting choices. So when Simon saves Patient, patient man. The shot, the camera looks back at River and Jane of course is all anxious and wants to go, and River gives Jane this look like, yeah, that's my brother. My brother just saved that guy. Like, it's this super proud sister moment. I thought was really sweet moment. The part where River is talking when they've been captured, and River is spouting off stuff about Christmas and sneaking down the
I actually wanted to bring that up. That was my last note that I have.
Yeah.
That whole scene just made me believe even firmer that she has some sort of psychic powers, because I feel like at that moment she was in Jane's head and reading off memories from Jane and being like, oh, Christmas this, and just like doing some random shit that only Jane knew about. And he, like, the look of terror on his face when she was spouting that, and he's like, you need to stop right now. Like, I really think she was getting in his head and like rehashing some of his old bad childhood memories or something like that. That's my theory.
And this is the second breadcrumb of that theory, because the first is with Badger. And
Yeah.
Yes.
he gets into Badger's head and starts talking about Badger. So
Mm-hmm.
these are little breadcrumbs. That's all I'm going to say.
I'm so fucking good at this.
It's almost like they were written for you to find.
The last
Screw you guys.
the last specific note that I have was I did write. I know Jesse had tears in his eyes when Simon tells her it's time to wake up, because that got me. That gets
Dude.
me. Yeah,
it's
an emotional. Oh yeah,
the love between those characters. I mean, like, those actors, I don't know what kind of prep work they did or what kind of backstory they came up with together, but like, the love between those two characters is so apparent. It none of it feels like acting. You feel that sense of like, that I just want to keep her safe. I don't care if that means, live on a spaceship in the middle of nowhere, if that means break into Alliance Hospital, or if that means talk down to this Alliance officer, whatever I have to do to keep her safe, because I'm the only one that really feels like I can communicate with her. And like you were saying earlier, even for me, there's this barrier there, and it's not a thin barrier, and it's not flimsy in any way, but it's just like, you can see the dedication that his character has. And I think it's a credit to Sean Marr that the way that he looks at her is so loving and so, not, it's almost paternal, but paternal in the way an older sibling would feel, kind of a thing. And you're 100% right. Way to call that from across the country, because I had tears in my eyes in that scene for sure. That was not, like I said, it wasn't the only one this episode, but that was definitely the correct call there.
Well, that was the moment for me that got me in the feels. And it's not just the acting. The writing is perfect, because it does the thing, right? It does where you set up the thing and then you give me the opposite as the payoff, right? Oh, is it time to go to sleep? No, it's time to wake up. And it's a beautiful line. And the fact that it's the brother giving aid to his sister is what makes it great. The last couple little dumb things I wanted to mention was fun stuff like in the hospital room the morgue, there's actually an LCAR style display panel behind River. I don't know if you noticed that.
I was kind of, it was one of those things where I was like, should I tell I know my wife isn't going to feel as excited as I am, but I also don't want to text Josh, because what if he isn't there yet? Sure. Ricky won't care.
What did you say?
I just figured you wouldn't. Big C. So It was like one of those things where I was like, maybe I'll just not make the note. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, Sean.
Well, in my podcast, I literally, at the annoyance of my other co-hosts, I try to find a Star Trek connection in every movie that we do. And I'm usually pretty successful. Either it has to be extremely old, or maybe really, really new, or super low budget. But even the new stuff now, because of Lower Decks and Discovery, that there's some crossover, things like that. But anyway, that was it for my notes.
All right. Well, before we
I
move
don't
along, I'm
think-
going to do a final call
I'm-
here.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought up the River and Jane moment. The last thing I had is my last note was talk about sacrificing your body when Jane just did the worm on that dude and
And
knocked
then
him
he
out.
took
It
a
was
spanner to the
intense.
noggin.
Well, it's
did.
He
He did.
did.
Simon ragdolled into his guard as
He
well,
did.
right? Like,
Yeah, and his
it's
was a
like, I
little
don't
more
have any
ragdoll.
skills.
Like
Right,
that would
he's
be
not trained
me
to
if
do
I
that.
tried to do that.
Yeah. But then he had the medical knowledge. He had the medical knowledge once the guy was down to put him to sleep without killing him.
Yep. Yep.
For a couple of minutes until the blue hands showed up.
Yeah. Until Bleeding
Well-
McLeod people showed up.
I think that means that we are ready to jump into our first segment, which, of course, as always, is called Simon Says. Simon Says, of course, is where we share our favorite quotes from this episode of Firefly, even if they were not uttered by Dr. Simon Tam. Normally, I go first because that's just how I am. I've even done it on episodes where we have guests because I'm a terrible host. So this week, let's just go ahead and have our guest Sean go first, and then we'll have Josh and Kylie, then Ricky, and I will go last for Simon Says. Take it away, Sean.
Well, the advantage of going first is I get to take the great one. So, well, and I might not take I think the greatest line of the episode is the last one, but that's not going to be.
Yeah, we all know it is.
We know it is. It is really the best line of the episode. And that's okay. So I'm just going to simply say, the next time you decide to stab me in the back, have the guts to do it to my face.
I knew someone was going to
Mistake.
pick that, so I did not choose that.
Yeah.
Good. The thing that I love about that line is that it sounds simplistic, sounds a little bit ineloquent, maybe even like dumb for a moment. But when you think about it, it's actually very poignant, because what he's saying to him is only a coward goes after a man's family. Okay? You have a problem with me, you settle it with me. That's what he means by, if you're going to stab me in the back, do it to my face. He's saying, don't go after the weak and vulnerable and sick amongst us. If you are going to mess with my family, you're going to mess with me, which again tracks with Mal's character. That's something we've seen him do in this series up to this point, specifically with Saffron. So I that's an excellent choice for Simon Says, Sean, and was my first choice as well. And that is part of why I had you go first, because I didn't want to be that guy. I think Josh and Kylie, you are up next. Go in whichever order between the two of you like.
Okay. So I don't personally identify with this particular quote, but I thought it was a good one. Jane says it when him and Mal are talking in the ship, and they're like rehearsing and they're still getting ready. And then Jane says, nothing buys bygones quicker than cash.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
thought that was, first of all, a good line. But also kind of figured that that might be a little bit of foreshadowing too. So
Yeah.
and it was.
Mine were comedic, definitely, because my first one was. It was hard to choose between these because my first one is smells like crotch.
Yeah. And you know that whatever crotch Jane is smelling
It's
is
not good.
No.
Got it.
It's mutter space.
Let me just say,
Yeah.
Jane probably has a podcast where he sits around with his friends for like an hour and a half on Friday nights, and that creates a very particular smell that he may be referencing.
It's probably
I
true.
hope I haven't just driven away all of our live viewers and all of our podcast listeners.
That was something that I was thinking about, but mine was actually the one that came after that from Fake Ryan, where Jane spits and he's like,
Could you not?
Could you not do that while we're ever?
It's like, should I qualify that? No, I should not qualify that. Just don't do it.
And
Yeah,
like he's spitting on his whetstone in the direction that Simon is eating. What
Yeah.
a monster!
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in
Yeah.
2021. Like that's horrific. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, right? And then it's just there was a couple lines in this that I will probably use in my everyday life, and that is one of them. Like, especially at work. Could you not do that? Like, ever? But
since my main was took, I think the other one that I'll write down.
I think
is
Ricky's
probably
next, right?
no. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the other one that I wrote down is like gotta be like 95% what Ricky's about to use for his.
Nope.
So I just want to. Okay,
He's very
all right,
sure.
Go ahead, Ricky.
He's
I'm sure.
very
Go ahead, Ricky. Awesome. Go ahead.
When they were learning their lines for all of the medical information. Really? You think I've got your line?
No. I'm
Okay.
waiting. Go ahead.
No, I was interpreting a look. Okay. Mal's misspeaks were particularly funny. He said their eyes were fixed and dilapidated when he wanted to say dilated.
Right. And I like that it fits again with Mal's vocabulary, right? Like he has big words, and some of them are similar to these, but these are not Mal's big words.
Yeah.
He is not used to these. No, I was gonna say the other that I thought maybe that you would seize on, not as like a this is my favorite line, but as like a line you would pick out to spotlight for various reasons. They do have the line in here where Jane says, "My dad always told me anybody who can't find work isn't looking hard enough." And that's the kind of thing that like I've heard people say to me in real life. And I will just point out that is said by a character who is shown throughout this episode to be misguided and very incapable of forethought and unable to empathize with others in dangerous situations. And he does eventually learn his lesson on that, and I think that was kind of cool. And I'm gonna stop myself there before we go too far. So that is our selections this week for Simon Says. There is one other thing about this episode, Ricky. I'm not sure if you noticed it. I noticed it because I don't watch with subtitles, but it's so shiny.
How shiny is it?
This episode is so shiny that, again, I'm going to defer to our guest because I think you guys probably might be able to pick my rating out of just how I talk about this episode, but I'm going to defer again to Sean, and then we'll go to Josh and Kylie, then we'll go to Ricky, and I will go last. So, Sean, for you, how shiny is this episode?
So I'm gonna hijack your segment for 10 seconds and say I teased it earlier, but I forgot to get there. So according to the subtitles, "go ram" is the word grand. So when he says "go get the go ram thing," it was "go get the grand thing," GRAND. And then at the end, when he tells Wash to take us out of the world, he says, "take us out of the row." So
It's always weird when there's shows that like don't have issues for a whole bunch of episodes in the subtitle or something, and all of a sudden it's just like somebody dropped the ball for a whole episode.
Yeah.
They probably just hired some new
like,
guy. They're like, let's get the intern to do this one. Jeff's off today. We need someone to fill in.
Some very low-level stenographer was doing it live, and they went, "First draft, good enough. Let's call it." I mean, it's on it. It's on a DVD. It's not like you didn't have time, or if it's on the internet streaming, you could just update the text file. Like in 2021, that's unforgivable.
Well, again, and maybe they have. Again, I was watching this on my DVDs. I don't have Hulu, so I had to literally watch this on a DVD, and I had to borrow a DVD player from work. Because again, I don't have an optical drive. I don't have an optical drive in my house. So
yeah, there's no reason to anymore.
Sorry.
Sorry. Anyways, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, so shiny. So how shiny is this for me? So I've been thinking about this for a while since we picked this episode. So this is going to get a 9.6 for me. And I hope that doesn't screw up your math too much. And the reason why it's a 9.6 is because this is my third favorite episode. And one of my first favorite episode is Out of Gas. I'm not going to tell you which my second one is because I'm afraid you might think, ooh, that episode. I don't want to like give you any kind of expectation of what it might be coming down. So all you're going to get is that you haven't watched it yet. And so that means, I guess, so this is 9.6. That means that one would be 9.7, and Out of Gas is a 9.8, and then the movie is a 10. And that's how I look at it. So it's a 9 point. And I just want to, real quick, this last little bit to hijack the segment. I had never heard of Firefly until after I had watched the movie. So I actually watched, okay, good. So I watched the movie first. A friend of mine said, hey, here's this new movie. It just came out on VHS, actually. I think we watched it on tape. I don't remember. In 2005, I think we still had VHS.
Hey, kids, do you know what VHS is?
Yeah, I'll go ask your uncle or your dad. It was probably on DVD. I don't remember. Anyway, it's 2005 or 2006. And so I watched this thing. And I was this movie. I was like, oh, my gosh. This is brilliant, and it's clever, and it's quirky, and it's low budget, and I love it. And who is this Nathan Field? Like, I didn't know any of these people. So I probably watched the movie 7 or 8 times before I got on IMDb and discovered there's a whole TV show that this thing is based on. And it gave more context to the movie.
Kinda.
Certainly because of the way the movie works out. So anyway, the show is always acted to me as almost like the prequels for Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
You know, like as opposed to the show is the meat, and Serenity is the exclamation point. To me, it's Serenity is the meat, and this is the appetizer.
That's very interesting perspective, and specifically to be exactly opposite of Josh and Kylie's perspective.
Right.
I mean, that's well. So there you go. To get a 9.6 from that perspective, I think adds a different dimensionality to it. Not in a way that I can do the math on it. So I'm just going to keep it as a 9.6. Kylie and Josh, how shiny is this episode for you guys?
I'm gonna say an 8. I wasn't quite on the edge of my seat as I was at the last one, which again makes me so sad that that's the episode that I missed because it was such a good episode. But I have been waiting, to get a little bit more of the story with River and see where that goes. So I'm excited I got a little bit of that.
I'm digging it. Josh, where did you land?
Since we're giving out weird decimal numbers, I'm gonna go with an 8.3.
You would?
Because it was fine. I don't know. It was kind of like everything I expected these characters to be. No, and the reason it's 8.3 is because I got to see the MIB come in. I got to see here come the men in black. They came in and they wrecked shit, and that's kind of what I wanted. Next is Reavers. So let's do this. You know what I mean? Like so I've been waiting to get a little more context with these guys, and it was really fun to see like how evil they actually are, and like how much
context is like worth a full point on your scale, is what you're saying.
Pretty much, yeah. If the doctors weren't as cool, like if the doctors were just there to be like, yes, we are here for the girl, then
you could call it average.
I would probably give it like a 7.2.
Cool.
But because them being there, adding a little bit more, suspense to the matter, and also that sweet weapon with the high frequency thing really reminded me of that video going around that's like, can you hear this sound? You can't, but your kids can, and it freaks them out. And I was like, oh, that's kind of just a play on that, I guess. And instead of freaking out your kids, it just melts your brain and makes you bleed from the eyes.
From your scene.
It pops your seams.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, that whole thing is worth a point for me.
Okay. Ricky D from Best Flicks with Ricky D. What is your rating? How shiny is this episode for you?
Well, I know Sean said this is one of his top 3 favorite episodes, but this is my favorite episode. So I'm actually going 9.5, 9.5 out of 10. This is another great heist episode. I've been talking. I feel like every episode I mention how much I like the train job sticks in my head, and like whenever I think Firefly, there's a couple moments that like couple episodes that really stick out. And this heist episode where they're robbing the hospital and they've got this cool helicopter, jet plane, shuttle thing. It's all just super cool. So I love this episode. 9.5. Favorite episode.
I agree. Specifically to that point, I thought, and Kylie, maybe you can back me up on this. I thought that little extra craft that they had, that they painted and they refurbished and they did all that stuff, very Cowboy Bebop. Like, we're going to send just a little quick ship out of our our not huge ship, but we'll send a little smaller ship to run out and do the important thing. And then it will come back. I felt very anime and very Bebop to me in general. I loved that ship within a ship thing, especially considering Serenity is already a small space. Did you get that vibe, Kylie?
I did. But I guess my whole thought on that is I just feel like in general it makes so much more sense to, I don't know, not land your whole giant ship at every place that you need to go. So therefore I would
Totally
also do
agree.
the little pod.
Does anybody know what kind of helicopter they were using for that thing? Like, that has to have been some sort of model, right?
It looked very elongated, which leads me to believe that it is a kind of helicopter whose name I have no way to even begin to guess what it is.
Dude, you could have just told me I don't know.
it's,
That's the short answer to
I-
that, man. Just
the
I don't know
only
is fine next time, okay?
Oh, I thought that was immediately obvious.
It's a Russian hind. They used those a lot during the Cold War, like when they were attacking
Snake.
Afghanistan.
Are you being serious though?
Yeah.
Okay,
Like
okay.
Roy-
I can confirm that.
That's excellent.
Like Roy
See?
Campbell-
Thank you, Jesse.
Get a load of this. You mean like the one Roy Campbell shows up in the first
In
Metal Gear Solid game?
yeah, that'd be the one.
Yeah.
Or the one that they
Trying to
steal
tell
in
me-
GoldenEye.
You trying to tell me to be
Well,
less
that was a British made helicopter.
verbose?
Oh,
You want me
okay,
to
all right.
use
Thank you,
less
thank you.
words to do a thing? You think that's going to happen? Anyways, for me, the shininess of this episode is kind of, I'm going to stick with what you guys are doing so that I can make these decimals work out in a way that's much easier to divide the final number. But this only puts me 0.01 off of my rating. I give this episode a 9.5, so it's actually a 9.6. And that's because to me this is very nearly as much fun as the last episode. It's not quite perfect in the way that the last episode was for me. I don't know. I think that there's so much in this episode that feels perfect, but there's something about it that feels less than last week. I don't know what it is. It's basically an intangible thing. It's probably negligible, and it mostly stems from me not wanting to go, this is a 10, this is a 10, this is a 10. It's just like
I think it's because last week was so good that this week wasn't really. It had a lot of fun elements to it, but it wasn't really comparable to what last week's episode was. Which is unfair to people that watched this when it was originally aired, because I'm sure it was out of order and it was all bullshit.
And if you give every episode a 10, that's just as silly as like saying every episode is your favorite or something stupid like that.
Yeah,
silly.
that's like the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
and nobody would do that. So
No.
to avoid
Not
doing
one
that,
person.
to avoid doing that, I'm gonna give it a 9.6. If I'm not mistaken, and it's possible that I am because I accidentally deleted some of your ratings as we were going, but I think that puts us at a solid 8 or 9 for this episode. I think it's a 9. If anybody else was writing the ratings down, let me know, but I'll go back through and edit that.
My spreadsheet said like 9.1 something, so yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yes, we're gonna call it a 9. Again, the writing here is perfect. The characterization is amazing. The acting from everybody involved is is just so on point. Everything feels internally logical. Everything feels consistent with what we know from these characters up to this point. Like, it does feel like the logical next step for each one of these characters. And as you were mentioning at the beginning, Sean, there is growth. We have growth going on here. Shepherd Rosie is in the live chat. She actually met the fan who discovered the Ariel ambulance in the desert, like after the series was over. And they, if I'm not mistaken, they pooled a bunch of money to buy that and then take it around to different conventions, which was just, I mean, so
Wow.
Rosie is illustrating a really cool point here that comes along with the sudden but inevitable rewatch, which is that we have the coolest listeners and fans. Rosie and Saxon were both fans that ended up in the movie Serenity as extras, and Susie, as I mentioned earlier, sent us gifts, and some of those gifts include things that were handed out at the premiere of Serenity only. Like, they weren't sold, they were only handed out there, and she sent multiples of that. Rosie gets in touch with me after every show, after she finishes listening or watching whichever one it is, and she goes, here's what I thought, here's what I loved about you guys' reactions, here's what I am hoping for Josh and Kylie, here's what I'm so thankful that Ricky mentioned this. Like, you guys, we have been getting overwhelmed on social media since we started this thing. And that's going to lead me directly into the sudden but inevitable shout out this week. The sudden but inevitable shout out is where we like to share and reflect some of the love that we've been getting on social media throughout the week. Normally here, I really try to find different people to shout out than we shouted out last time and stuff like that. But this week, I'm going to cheat a little bit, because if you watched us last week, you know that Meg and Carla were here from the Bedwed or Behead podcast. And if you watched us the week prior, you know that Cameron was here from Green Shirt. Since Cameron was here and since Meg and Carla were here, they have done nothing but retweet us and promote our show and like our stuff and, share our links, and just, they become sort of part of our family, our little pod crew. This boat that is Sudden but Inevitable has people on it now, and I'm so grateful for that. So if you haven't, go to Twitter, follow @GreenShirt87, go to your favorite podcast service, download all the episodes of Green Shirt. It's a newbie's trek through the next generation. Cameron is learning all about Star Trek from people who love it. It's a very fun show. It's very similar conceptually to this one. I promise you'll have a good time. Definitely follow @BedwedBeheadPod on Twitter. Meg and Carla host the Bedwed or Behead podcast, which you can find on any podcast service. It's so much fun. I think they explained it well last week, but they play FMK with fictional characters only, never real people. And I can speak for everyone here and, say that we had a beautiful time. And I can say, Kylie, don't worry. Meg and Carla are not gone, and they will be back, and they cannot wait to spend some time with you.
Cool.
Now,
Hey,
I've
can
got
I
all of
actually
that out of
piggyback
the
on this
way.
really quick, Jesse?
Yeah, go for it.
Do you remember the last iTunes review that you read?
I don't know. I mean, I remember it, but I haven't been able to read them all because I don't actually have an Apple account.
Well, but that's not. Do you
the
remember
last
if it
one-
was it Guy
I think
and
it was
NC?
Rosie. No,
Was it the airplane
I think
mechanic?
the last one. That wasn't a review. That was somebody who just contacted me. I think the
okay.
last
Yep.
one that I read on air was Rosie's, where she was saying my face hurts at the end of every episode. And
Okay, perfect.
you have
so
them,
I would like
please.
to bring up the we've had 3 reviews since Rosie's review, and
Mm.
they're all 5 stars, which is wonderful. Thank you guys so much for that. That's a huge help on any front. Anytime you're listening to the show, if you're new listening to the show and you're enjoying it, throw a little 5-star review on there. It really, really helps us. So to all these people that left us these reviews, super, super appreciate it. You guys are the shiznit. First up, we have Guy in NC. He says, a good Firefly podcast. This is a fun show where, as a fan of Firefly, I get to relive the excitement of watching it for the first time. Keep up the good work. Next review.
You're welcome.
Next review comes from Cameron Harrison. I think that must
know
be
that.
Cameron from
That's
so
Cameron, yeah.
shiny. This show will keep you in the air when you ought to fall down. Two Firefly fans share their love with the canceled too soon show with two newbies. It's wonderful reliving our first watches through Josh and Kylie's eyes. Jesse is a fantastic host who keeps the conversation going at a good pace, and Ricky D has all the deep cut info to learn you things you never knew about the show. Their mouths are talking, and you might want to look into that.
I love it. Thank
Um,
you, Cameron.
And then the last one we got is from David. And he says, the pod for Firefly fans. As a longtime Firefly fan, this was the podcast for me. The hosts have a great dynamic and really helps me remember the good times about the show. Plus, I love the theme song.
Oh, thank you, David. Does
Love
David
that theme
have
song.
a second? David have a second name listed there? Or is that just David?
It's David M. Wine. David Ween.
Thank you, David Ween. Wine? M. Wine? Now I want to know how
Wine.
to pronounce it. I just
David
really
Wine,
appreciate
yeah.
that, man.
Yeah.
It
Thank
looks
you
like
a
we
lot,
have
man.
we have a request for Sean in the chat.
Yes, Shepherd Rosie asks, Sean, if you could please share the story of your T-shirt. It looks like to be a firefly in a jar.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Like a
Yeah,
firefly that you catch.
Yeah.
Cute.
There we go.
He's
Sorry.
even got little holes in it so it
Yeah.
can breathe.
I actually I can't take any credit for this. So my in-laws know that I'm a nerd, and they buy me nerd things, and so I got this shirt from either my in-laws or somewhere. I just got it for Christmas. I don't know where they found it. I guess they just Googled Firefly memorabilia. I tweeted out a picture earlier this week where it's the blue sun, and you'll see Jane wearing a blue sun T-shirt throughout the series, and so that I have that one as well as much to the chagrin or the consternation of my wife. I have
I
a
love that word.
a Serenity Christmas ornament that makes the tree every year, and it's huge. I mean, it's bigger than my iPhone, and it's one of those that you have to find a really sturdy branch to hang it on. So,
Yep.
That's
Those are
very
the
cool.
best kind, really. Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
It actually
a lot
goes
of
right
us-
next to my Star Trek D7 battle cruiser. They kind of fight. It's pretty funny.
I was gonna ask because I know Hallmark had that line, and they're so
Mhm.
good, and you seem like such a good person on the inside of you and on the outside of you. So I figured you've got a awesome,
Yeah.
very cool to confirm that. Speaking of T-shirts, as we mentioned earlier, Shepherd Susie sent us all a bunch of Firefly memorabilia. You can go check out that video at the Twist My Arm YouTube channel. Trust me, you don't want to miss the stuff that is in that video. It's kind of mind-blowing. Really quickly, I do have one more name to add to the sudden but inevitable shout out, and that is the Fandom Thing pod. We did shout out It's a Fandom Thing last week when Meg and Carla were here. They actually brought up the Fandom Thing pod hosted by Aaron, and I can't help myself. I have to shout this podcast out again just because Aaron has been sharing and liking and retweeting and helping us get our signal boosted on Twitter. And little tiny piece of news. We actually did break 200 followers on Twitter this week. So that was really cool. And I think that might have been, again, I always say this might sound small to other people, but to us it's huge. And it was just so cool. Very cool week on Twitter for us. That happened. Then I tweeted at Jose Molina about Ariel, and he said thanks, and I screenshotted that. It's been an amazing week all around for the sudden but inevitable rewatch. We've had this episode to talk about. We had great guests 3 weeks in a row. Thank you, Sean, so much for coming here. It's just been, this great run of episodes. I just want to tell everybody listening and watching again and forever, thank you guys so much for making this possible for me. This makes my Fridays so much better than they would be without it. And I love spending time with Ricky and Kylie and Josh and whoever happens to be sitting in our guest seat, because this is just, I think, one of the best shows ever. And everybody loves talking about it. So I'm just happy that I get to do that with you guys. Before we wrap everything up, Sean, what is the easiest way for people to find all of the information they want about Cheap Seat Reviews?
Well, really, so I'm not cool. We don't have a website that's really all shiny and pretty. We don't. So really, cheapseatreviews.libsyn, libsyn.com is the easiest way. It's the only way you can get all 300 plus episodes, because iTunes only backlogs 100. So if you're like, hey, I really want to listen to the episode about Star Crash, where you guys did it live and I wore this shirt in front of a camera, then yeah,
I do.
well, do what?
I do want to listen to that. Star Crash is awful, but good. I want to.
Star Crash
really want to listen to
such a good time. That was episode 50. That was a long time ago. So the only way to get that is cheapseatreviews.libsyn.com to get there. So that's really the easiest way. We're on Twitter at CheapSeatCast. And Facebook is, of course, facebook.com/cheapseatreviews.
Excellent. Thank you.
If I could follow Sean up, I just want to mention I've also got Best Flicks with Ricky D. New episode every Sunday.
I was actually going to bring it up because I wanted to point out that the last episode of Best Flicks with Ricky D that I listened to
was really good.
It was the best episode of Best Flicks with Ricky D that has ever
That's what I've heard.
So you need to go download this. Ricky has this new format that I'm going to let him tell you about. Take it away, Ricky D.
Yeah. Previously, I was just kind of doing 1 or 2 shows per episode. That's kind of what a lot of different movie podcasts do, and it's hard to fight through that arena. So now I am looking at everything that Netflix brings to new streaming in March, everything HBO Max brings to streaming in March, and I go through every single item. For last week's episode, I hit 69 new releases coming to Netflix. And not just Netflix original series, not just their new stuff, but also Rain Man. Rain Man came to Netflix. So I go, hey, there's Rain Man. Here's a little bit of what it's about moving forward. So I put maybe between 30 seconds and 90 seconds into every movie. I try to put a little comedy, a little bit of attitude into it. And it came out really well last week. And I'm so excited to see what more I can do with it. So that's where Best Flicks with Ricky D is headed. And it's going well.
I am really loving it. And as a person who runs a weekly podcast that happens to also be live, that I also only give myself 2 days to edit before it has to come out because I'm insane, I really dig having a podcast in my life that tells me what's worth my time on streaming services, because I have a lot of streaming services and very little time to use it.
And there's also so much coming out. You need a little help sifting through it.
It's rotating in and out. It's new stuff being released. It's all kinds of stuff. Josh, what have you been up to with the Twist My Arm Network this week, my friend?
Oh man, I'm always up to something, dude.
Sneaky.
So right now I'm honestly really working hard on this new, it's not new, so we have 5 episodes now, but it's the Marvel Cinematic Monday podcast. A buddy of mine and I go through and talk about all sorts of Marvel stuff. But it's not just movies and TV. Like we're reading comics and we're going through some of our favorite stories and stuff like that. This last episode was, we've had some good quality questions from some listeners, but this last episode we wrapped up WandaVision, which was a lot of fun. We actually kind of acquired a new host via that episode. So there's a little bit of it's hard for me to promote this right now because we're about to revamp it a little bit by next week. But I'm extremely excited to see where the Marvel Cinematic Monday podcast goes with Chip, Josh, and now Roy.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
I am also excited. And I really, like you were saying, as a guy who doesn't read the comics anymore, like I have issues of comics, right? But I don't have access to Marvel Unlimited or any of that stuff. It's really nice to be able to go, hey, what are they pulling from, so that I can act like I know what's about to happen, so that when my wife asks me, I don't have to go, I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
'cause I
and
love the Marvel
it's been
movies, but
eye-opening
I
for
don't
me
know it all.
too. So yeah.
Yeah, Chip knows his stuff, and I watched the last episode. Roy knows his stuff too, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
very glad to have him aboard for
It's
that.
gonna be
So
a fun time.
for the sign off order here, you guys, it'll go me, Sean, Ricky, Kylie, Josh. If you would like, you can get a hold of us on Facebook at facebook.com/sudden but inevitable rewatch. That's not true. You can get a hold of us at facebook.com/twistmyarmpodcast. You can follow us on Twitter at sudden but. Josh, go ahead and hit that music. You can follow us on Instagram at sudden but inevitable podcast. And to get everything all in one place, you can go to twistmyarmpodcast.com/SBI. The Ballad of Inevitability is performed by Mark Cohen and a choir of rebellious angels, and that makes him mighty. I would like to say thank you again to our guest Sean of Cheap Seat Reviews this week. So, with that, I have been Jesse.
I'm Sean.
This is Ricky.
Kylie.
And I'm Josh. Call 508-93-TWIST and leave us a message.
Josh, take us out of the world.